let me ask you this. When did you know he was just different? Like, because there were those moments that we had early on. I mean, like, the only thing I was grateful for is he held out my first 2 years because he just stole offensive linemen's souls. I mean, he
Yeah.
ruins practices.
Yeah, he ruins practices. I'm sure for you, like there's a thin line of where you're like, hey, we want a good look, but we want to be able to run our shit.
We pissed him off though because I said, "Hey, realistically, we're gonna play it like what you get paid, like what you get played." So we slid to him,
Hmm.
the last couple camps, and he's like, he was so pissed at me. I go, "Hey, bro, this is what's real," because
This
it
is
would
what it
create
is.
false tells for the second and third levels of our defense because he's getting these quick wins. Guys are like, "Oh, this is great." I'm like, "No, he's gonna get so much more attention." But
I
he
knew
is.
day two, coach. I knew day
Did
two
you?
to answer your question. I remember walking up to Jeff Fisher, me and William Hayes, and
Yeah.
saying, hey, Fish, I know it doesn't work this way, but you should go ahead and make him the highest paid defensive player in the NFL because that's what he deserves. And we told the media he's going to be a Hall of Famer. Now I
You
do
knew
this
that.
for a
You knew that
living.
after 2 days.
2 days. You know the violence with which he uses his hands.
Totally. That's the
It's
thing he doesn't get enough credit for is everybody talks about the leverage, the explosion, the accuracy of his hands. He always won with his hands.
they're in a frenzy and they're totally controlled at the same time. And I'll never forget, I was the old guy that was walking into the meeting room at 8 o'clock after, everything died down in training camp. And, I'd watch film and nobody else really did it. I'm not saying I knew what to do and others didn't. I was just older. And I walked in the meeting room 2, 3 nights in a row. Nobody left in the building. This motherfucker's sitting in my desk at my film projector and he's watching film. And I would kick any other rookie out. But I just watched the way he broke the game down. And it was like somebody at some point taught him football. Like I don't know who his coach was at Pitt. I don't know who his high school coach was. I don't know if it was dad, but he came to the NFL like a pro. And so that's what happens. And you know this when it's a confluence of great physical ability and the work ethic and the understanding of the game. That's what happens. You get Aaron Donald.
Yeah,
Um,
he's second to none. It's funny that you say that, Chris, because so the first year he's here, we have that first, mini camp that's allotted to the new staff. So that was really the only time in the offseason. So he comes to that first thing and just wrecks practice. I mean, it's 2 days of just pure carnage right before the draft. And then he's working through a contract thing and he was away for the rest of the offseason. Then he was away for the entire really training camp. He actually came the week we were opening up against the Colts and he could have played, but his first game was against Washington. Long story short, we're playing Jacksonville early on in the season. It's like week 6 and we're getting ready to go to Jacksonville, play them. We were going to stay in Jacksonville and then play the Cardinals in London after that. But I go in, I'm leaving Thursday night. That's when you're kind of wrapping up the game plan, putting the red zone stuff together. I'm leaving. It's like 9:30 at night. There's one light on in the whole building because normally people wrap up a little bit earlier. This freak is in the D-line room and he's watching like the get back on track downs to see the sets of the guards and things like that. And that was my like, I knew this guy was great, but like the work he puts in, that's what people see the production. Nobody knows all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes where it's like, the intrinsic motivation, the natural feel. He is the stories could go on, but this guy, and then just seeing what it meant to him to watch him accomplish things. Like you talk about a guy that really didn't care about the individual accolades and was all about just winning and trying to affect positive change with his teammates. He's a fucking G.
yeah, love that guy. We both love that motherfucker. I think suffice to say. And my question, my $1,000,000 question to you, because you're the scheme guy. How would you game plan for Aaron Donald if you had to play him now that he's out of the league and you can kind of dream that up without any repercussions?
Well, he'd get the slide every single snap. And then in any of the situations where it elicited 5-0 protections when we get into our odd spacing, like I've seen teams do, they just say, hey, let the back check him. And unless it's a rare situation where you get early control, we're just sacrificing 20% of our eligibles. That was where, like, when sometimes we'd move him to the edge, I'm like, no, let him rush inside. You can't manipulate protections as much, but I've seen more full turn protections. I've seen more people willing to just say, fuck it, we'll waste 20% of our eligibles with a back or a tight end and just put him in that A or B gap based on where he's at. And then when he's out, I would jump the ball and not let him sub back in.
Yeah. That's a big one. And then taking shots when he walks off the field.
And
Like,
that was like, we literally had a menu of plays. Like we had a different call sheet because of how teams would approach him when he'd go out of the game, knowing that that was the approach of a lot of these sound OCs that, we would play some more conservative things deep to short because that was their time to get those plays off.